Earlier, I spoke with leading political expert in foreign policy and international security, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University, Joe Siracusa, and asked him on how this war will affect financial markets around the world.
And of course, the big question now is how long will the world allow Israel to pound this place into dust? And
Yes,
how long will it be?
absolutely.
And how long will the Arab world tolerate this kind of thing? Now, there is no moral equivalency. I'm not saying that one side is the same as the other side. I mean, the Israelis are trying to avenge these murders that took place. On the other hand, you can't treat Gaza as a country. Can't treat Hamas as the leaders of a country. I mean, as soon as you start to imagine that Gaza is a country, and keep in mind that Gaza City within Gaza Strip has been inhabited since the 5th century. I mean, it ain't like no one's been there before. You know, the Egyptians used to run the place, and they were happy to get rid of it. And now, of course, the UN would like to see all these people go back to Egypt. Push them off on the Egyptians. So, look, it's very complicated, and it could easily morph into a regional conflict. And of course, it affects everything. It affects markets. It affects politics around the world. I mean, and it takes, go ahead.
No, sorry, Joe. No, well, exactly as you were saying. Can you give us some details on how this war will affect global markets? We know uncertainty over what happens next plays large roles in whether the Hamas-Israeli conflict can be contained to Palestine or whether it will morph into a regional or even worldwide conflict.
Well, I learned on my 2 years on Wall Street when I worked for Merrill Lynch back in the day that in conflicts that start to emerge like this, the market tends to factor these things as they go along. And the market makes adjustments in terms of things. And of course, you got to think about the futures market and the rest of it. The market is watching this very closely, and it has no feelings. The market's the market. And in America, the top, the Dow Jones, that is the top 30 countries, about half of them make armaments, and they do well in any war. In fact, that's why the American economy has done so well the past 10 years, because they can ignore the soap opera in Washington. They don't care about Washington. And every time there's a war or prospect of war, Boeing does well, Northrop does well, Martin Marietta, Raytheon, and the rest of them. And of course, now they're arming Ukraine. They're going to arm the Israelis now. They're going to rearm the Dome and the rest of it. So they're all doing great business. And keep in mind that since the 1950s, American politicians have sold to the American people the benefits of a wartime economy. That is, we've got a military-industrial complex. They're not evil. They're just there. And they make a lot of money in war or the preparation for war. And America's been preparing for war since 1950. We haven't had World War III yet. Maybe we're lucky, and maybe we're just smart. I'm not quite sure. So the major economies don't have much problem. Now, the thing is, if it goes regional.
So, Joe, talking business, as you said, war isn't a bad thing for the military-industrial complex, whose companies make up the bulk of the Dow. Now, can you give us a bit of a quick insight into this?
Well, in the last American military budget, I don't know, $360 billion or something. $250 billion went right to, I think, Grumman for the F-35s. I think it was Grumman. And they get these huge payoffs from these preparations for war. So, it doesn't hurt them. What hurts, of course, is the futures market. Right now, oil's going down a little bit. But if the Iranians get into this and start closing the straits around them, oil is going to get expensive again. And, if you're carrying a futures market, all the major firms have futures markets. And of course, things become a little dangerous. As soon as energy goes up, the inflation goes up, and Western economies such as Australia and America, the cost of living goes up, and it's a crunch on the middle class and the lower classes. So these all have knock-on effects. In terms of these kind of things. And, war is a terrible thing for individuals.
Now,
but for the economy, it is not. Go ahead.
Now, lastly, Joe, I can't let you go without asking about America's part in this. Today, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he arrived in Israel showing the United States support. But I need to state that under former President Donald Trump, there was no war of this scale. In fact, there was a peace deal and there was no conflict between Russia and Ukraine either. Trump has clearly stated that there would have been no wars and there will be no wars under his presidency. Why can't Biden achieve this same result?
Well, I don't want to be cruel, Hortensia, but Biden is incompetent. You know, he's not just his age. He's a little bit out of his league. You know, we're about the same age, and he can't handle these problems. He's turned over a lot of these things to other people. And you know, since the botching of the exit from Kabul and the Russian military exercise in Ukraine and the rest of it, he's lost his what we call a charismatic authority. No one's afraid of him. So people are jumping all over the world, and they figure the United States, you know, we can handle them because they're not going to do something. And of course, American people are not in the mood to go rescue people around the world in a big hurry. They're prepared to give them whatever arms they need and that kind of thing. But the American armed forces are holding off for the big war with China, maybe a war with Russia one day. I don't know. But Joe Biden is he doesn't have it. Let me tell you something else. I've been following his career since he was elected in 1973. We were both 29 years old that day. And he hasn't done anything distinguished. You know, there isn't a single speech that he gave is memorable. There's not a piece of legislation with his name on it that's memorable. He has no famous friendships with anybody. He never did anything of importance. So, you know, the idea that he hasn't solved the problem now is no surprise to me, because he's a pretty ordinary guy who just kept on going and going, and no one's afraid of him. And he's surrounded by people who don't know any history. And the history says that we need a two-state solution, or even if we don't have a two-state solution, we have to pretend we have one, so that they get everybody off of everybody's back in the Middle East. But the Israelis are no longer in the mood to talk about these things. The Americans no longer have the cachet to force anybody to do it. And of course, Vladimir Putin and President Xi are off in the corner watching this. Our European friends and allies, they're watching it too. And no one seems to be able to do much about this.
Joseph Siracusa, thank you so much for your expert analysis and your time this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.